Now, this video is all going to be about Costa Rica, where I'm just back from in August with my family. And I don't know about you guys, but before we went, we had loads of questions because Costa Rica for us was a very different holiday destination than we'd gone to before. And this was our summer holiday, and we did have a fair few concerns. So I'm making this video today to hopefully be able to answer them for anyone who's going through the same sort of decision making. Now, the first thing I'm going to start with was our biggest concern, which was the weather. We went in August, which is the height of the rainy season. However, big relief to know that actually the weather was fantastic. It occasionally rained, and when I say occasionally, I mean we can count on one hand. Now, these thunderstorms all happened about 4 or 5 o'clock. Given that the sun sets in Costa Rica about 6 o'clock, is pretty much the end of your day, so it's actually not really a big deal to maybe leave the pool half an hour early. The temperature for the 2 weeks that we were there was pretty much consistently low 30s, so very hot. We found the flight itself to be very good. Thomson's, for I think it's about £60, offer extra legroom, which are a set of seats at the back of the plane with a couple more inches. Now, I'm not the tallest person, so extra legroom isn't really a necessity for me, given that I can generally stretch out on most planes. However, the rest of my family really appreciated the extra legroom. It also felt a bit exclusive, you know, walking to the back. You could almost pretend it was business class. We stayed at the Riu Guanacaste, which is part of a bigger Riu complex. It's actually 2 hotels, both of which Thomson offer, one being the Guanacaste, the other being the Riu Palace. Now, at the moment, they're both rated 5T. However, if you look on Thomson's website, you'll see that they're actually going to downgrade the Riu Guanacaste to a 4T hotel next year. I feel this is about fair. Whilst I actually have no complaints about the Guanacaste whatsoever, it just didn't feel quite like a 5-star hotel. So that's certainly something to bear in mind if you're trying to make a decision between the two. Now, we found the rooms were all very large. They had free safes, plenty of built-in storage, very large bathroom, the sort of standard you'd expect if you have ever stayed in America, for example, in terms of size. Now, the Guanacaste is shaped like a U, and any room facing inwards of that U is generally described as having a sea view. So you're looking across to the other side of the hotel, but off in the corner you are actually seeing a beautiful stretch of beach. Now, we were very lucky at the time of year we were there, in that there was actually a humpback whale with a calf out at sea. Being the fun family that we are, we enjoyed nothing more than sitting on our balcony and whale watching. Now, there's not many places in the world you can do that, especially on a package holiday. The rooms come with a mini bar, which has all your major spirits that you can just serve yourself, along with a range of soft drinks. That's topped up every 2 days, and the spirit sizes are that, so you really shouldn't need it topped up every 2 days. Now, the Riu Guanacaste only has one large pool. Now, there's plenty to choose from within the pool. It's all very shallow throughout, but there's a sort of lazy river type thing. There's submerged sunbeds, there's a waterfall, and there's also a swim up bar. Now, this is where my first and one of my only issues with the Riu Guanacaste actually lies. The swim up bar, it was adult only, but it got very smelly. I think it was a combination of alcohol mixed with chlorine. We stayed clear of that sort of area. Also, that sort of area at the top of the pool tended to get very loud. There was people drinking from pretty much as soon as the bar opened at 10 o'clock in the morning, right through to close. The Americans. But everyone has their own different holiday experience, I guess. Now, I don't know if you've read any TripAdvisor reviews, but one of the issues with the beach at the Guanacaste is that it's not crystal clear water and pure white sand. It's got a slight blackish tinge to it, but by and large, actually, you'd probably describe it more as a sort of sand you'd see on a beach in the UK. Now, I didn't have a problem with that. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. If you walk to the very end of the cove, where the Guanacaste is, there's some rocks that if you wait till low tide you can clamber over, you actually get to a pristine white beach with the sort of turquoise waters that maybe people were expecting. Also, you'd be surprised at the number of people who aren't willing or haven't even noticed that there's another beach at the very end. I went a few times and I could count on one hand the number of people who were on that small pristine beach with me. If you've read any TripAdvisor reviews, what seems to be the main issue or the main recurring theme in terms of an issue with the Riu Guanacaste is the food. Now, I don't completely understand this. As a Brit who's mainly holidayed in Europe, I think the selection was actually fantastic. I think maybe the North Americans, who are used to perhaps a greater spread, felt like this was an issue, but it wasn't for us. There is an Asian restaurant, an Italian, a steakhouse, and one that you'd probably call modern dining. Now, the reservation system for the other restaurants, we didn't fully understand it, and we were there 2 weeks. It seemed to me that either you came down at 6 and you got seated and had your meal straight away, or if you came down later, you basically got given a buzzer, sort of like Frankie and Benny's in the UK, and got told to come back when that buzzed. Except that didn't always happen, and sometimes they were just like, we're full, go away. I'm now going to talk about the tours on offer by Thomson and other people, because why would you go to Costa Rica, the most biodiverse place on the planet, just to sit by your pool for 2 weeks? Now, Thomson do a range of tours. I'd say maybe there's about 10 of them, all very reasonably priced. You can book here in the UK, or you can book with your rep at the hotel. You'll find when you walk onto the beach, there are lots of locals who call themselves tour guides, offering a range of tours themselves. Now, we actually booked with one of these locals. His name was Eric. He wore a yellow t-shirt with his name helpfully on it. And our tours were absolutely fantastic. Can't vouch for anyone else, but he simply took a deposit, so there was always that peace of mind that he wasn't simply going to run off with your money. The first tour we booked was actually a day trip to Nicaragua. I say day trip, we left at 5 in the morning and didn't get back till 10 at night. So it was certainly an entire day. That tour was potentially a bit long if you've got young kids. It was about 5 hours on the bus, as well as 1 hour just to cross the border between Costa Rica and Nicaragua, which was certainly an experience. But other than that, I would recommend this trip to absolutely anyone. We got to look into the mouth of a volcano. Now, apparently there's only 8 volcanoes in the world that you can actually do that at, so grab that chance whilst you can. We also went to a town called Masaya, where there was a large market selling all the touristy things. We then went to Granada, which was the most beautiful, colourful, colonial style city. And we also got to go on a lake. People are actually living in giant mansions in the lake on rocky outcrops. And that was just a really different change of scenery, really, given that a lot of Nicaragua is actually very, very poor. And in fact, a lot of them actually do try and go to Costa Rica to work, just because they can earn 10 times the daily wage than they'd get in Nicaragua. Our second trip we booked with Eric was the Nature Lover trip. Now, we were actually very lucky in that this turned out to be a private tour, and this was one of the highlights of our holiday. We went rafting down a river. Now, I say rafting, not whitewater. There was a couple of gentle, they could barely be called rapids, but the wildlife was incredible. Straight away, we were seeing crocodiles. We actually saw baby crocodiles as well, which was really cool. Boat-billed herons, egrets, loads of lizards, like there were 10 a penny by the end of it. After our initial river cruise, we got driven to what was essentially a cafe. Now, this was potentially the bit that felt a bit touristy, but in the trees there was loads of macaws, which, you know, were technically in the wild, and I think that counts. And also we saw our first toucan, which was there as well, which was incredible, because I don't know about you guys, but one of the things I had on my to-see list in Costa Rica was a toucan. Our final tour was a Monteverde overnight tour. Now, Thomson do this through their rep. That's about $400 US. But what you tend to find with the locals on the beach is that they actually do undercut Thomson price-wise, which is why we went with them. Another benefit you get booking with a tour guide on the beach and not with Thomson is that you can actually tailor make pretty much your experience. And because there was things on the Thomson excursion which we'd already seen on our other day trips, we weren't so keen to do that, which is why we went with Eric again. Now, the Monteverde overnight tour was fantastic. We actually ended up, once again, this being a private tour, he drove us in his car, which was a 4x4, which was needed. The roads to Monteverde are about 60% tarmac, 40% rocks, and the journey itself is quite long. It took us more or less 5 hours. The first part of our Monteverde trip was at the very top of the cloud forest, where we got to do the skywalk. Now this is about a 2-hour walk over hanging suspension bridges, which was incredible. Now we didn't see that much wildlife when we were doing that, and that's partly because I think it's such a vast area. But it was certainly amazing just to be in the rainforest and to experience it. As part of the rainforest walk, we also got to stop off in a hummingbird garden. Now I had my concerns about a hummingbird garden. I imagined it to be sort of like a butterfly park that you'd get in this country. I imagined we'd be basically in a giant aviary. It's not. It is the wild. These are all wild birds. All that the company's done is just put out feeders, essentially. The hummingbirds are everywhere. I'm going to try and put up a video here if my technology skills extend to it. Now, if you've seen Star Wars and you can imagine the sound of TIE fighters, that was what the hummingbirds were making. They were everywhere and they were just flying all around. And for someone who loves birds, I thought that was honestly the most amazing, amazing experience. Now, Monteverde itself, it is a cloud forest. So expect cloud. And when I mean cloud, I mean low-level, damp clouds. When we were there, it rained quite heavily for a couple hours, and then it would clear. But then maybe half an hour later, you'd see the clouds roll in again, and you'd be back to your grey skies. Now, Eric actually booked us into a 4-star hotel, which was lovely. I mean, it had a swimming pool, it had a spa, it had a lovely view. But the one issue we did have was that the rooms just felt a little bit damp. Now, I think once again, this is just due to the fact that it is a cloud forest, and there is this just pervasive dampness all across Monteverde, but it certainly wasn't off-putting. The night of our Monteverde trip, we went on, once again, and I know I'm saying this a lot, another highlight of the trip for us, which was a night walk. We had a different guide for this, who actually had worked for National Geographic, and his knowledge was second to none, his English was impeccable, and his enthusiasm for the jungle and the wildlife was just infectious. It really did just make our trip. Essentially, we all got torches and we followed our guide through the forest trying to spot wildlife. Now, I don't know if any of you are bird watchers or even remotely interested in wildlife of Costa Rica. You should be. Why would you come otherwise? But we were lucky enough to see on this night walk a resplendent quetzal, a motmot, a toucan, just to name a few. And the night walk itself really did just feel like you were in the heart of Costa Rica, and it was all a bit intrepid, and I would absolutely recommend it as the top trip to do if you're in Monteverde. Now, the morning after our night walk, we drove, once again, another long drive. It was about 3 hours to Arenal volcano. Now, the Arenal region is completely different to Monteverde. It is still a rainforest, but the day we were there, it was crystal clear blue skies, and the main attraction for the Arenal region is the Arenal volcano. Now, when you picture a volcano, you tend to picture a conical composite volcano, but invariably they're actually hard to find. A lot of volcanoes over the years tend to have lost, they're not as distinguished as they once were. Arenal, on the other hand, is perfectly like you'd think it is. I'm going to try and put a picture of Arenal down here, just for you to see, so you can see exactly how amazing it is. One tip I would give you, if you're thinking about booking Costa Rica through Thomson, is book it in advance. We booked within 90 days of our departure, and we ended up paying, I think it was roughly $2,600 per person. Whereas we actually met someone by the pool who'd booked back in January for their August departure, and they basically paid half the price that we did. So get on it if that's something that you are actually seriously considering about. The final question we had about Costa Rica before we went was actually the currency. The local Costa Rican currency is the colones, but US dollars are accepted pretty much everywhere, and we only took dollars. We did not take any colones, and we never needed it. All we did find, however, was that if you were in maybe the smaller towns and villages, if you were paying in dollars, you occasionally got your change back in colones. And that really concludes my video. All in all, would recommend Costa Rica to absolutely everybody, and we would actually recommend the Riu Guanacaste as well. It was a fantastic hotel, and we had the most amazing time. Now, if you've got any questions, do put them below, and I will try and answer them as best as I can.